Welcome back to the most professional StarCraft 2 with a 3-time and current world champion and widely considered to be the greatest player of all time. The Zerg in the red, the finisher. It's Serral, facing off against the most Terran player out there and a former world champion himself in the blue, Micro Jackson. It's ByuN. In a best of 5 Terran versus Zerg showdown as part of the $10,000 Pigsty Festival number 7. And before we get started, be incredible. You could smash that like button, maybe even subscribe. And we kind of the algorithm. And Jimmy, what are we at? 1,837 likes on this video, on this cast. And I'll cast another one. Nope. Probably do it anyways, because I don't know what else I'd do with my life. But thank you for watching. Hopefully, you've had a good day so far. And hopefully, it's about to get just a little bit better. As the Zerglings here to drive back the Reaper. And it's important for the Terran to keep tabs on everything going on. He knows there's some Zerglings. He knows there's 2 bases. He knows a queen's about to pop out. But they were all of them deceived. For another hatchery was made. Somehow Serral managed to get everything you'd expect and a 3rd hatch without delaying Zergling speed. Because somehow he's able to cut corners without losing any edges. Which a geometrical quandary, or quarterly, or whatever makes sense there. And the Overlord, just hanging out, watching everything. He knows with the Reapers on the other side of the map, the unit that ByuN has gotten nerfed not once, but twice. And he's always trying for thrice, but the Reapers at the front means no Marines back at home, though. That's not going to be true for very long. Somehow Serral manages to see everything ByuN is building as he starts building. Every relevant part of the build. The 2nd and the 3rd expansions, the first one is obviously implied. He does not know about the factory behind it. But he can have his suspicions. And actually, a little bit of a Zerg rush here. Just a taste, a designated pressure. Definitely not all in, but a lot more Zerglings than you expect. He knows for a science fact that there's no more units but the Reapers and maybe a Marine behind it. Though, actually, I was going to compliment his genius, but instead, his preparation is what we're going to settle on. As the wall-off is completed, he's got both add-ons. The sort of build that ByuN, who's essentially created the definition, the staple of Terran builds throughout almost a decade of StarCraft 2. Sure, players like Clem and Maru have their own kind of specialty boutique Terran builds that us mortals can't even hope to replicate, but ByuN has always been, alongside Cure of course, the people's Terran. The builds that every Diamond Leaguer will try to make work for them and then crash and burn and complain about insert Terran or Protoss here. Maybe both, but we have the... He's going for a Banshee. And the... Oh, really? Oh, I know. Overlord survives. For now. The amount of plot armor that Serral's units have is just a little obscene. But being in the right place at the right time is about 90% of everything in life. So I'm glad you already smashed that like button and subscribe. But a layer is halfway done. The creep spread has begun. ByuN, without anything, in order to stop this, is not going to be having any fun. And only a Banshee anywhere close to the sun. How many puns do you have, Winter? At least a ton. But don't worry, I'm done. Put down the gun. Lair's done. Marines on their way out. The Overlord who lived will spot all of this. Not that he was is going to be surprised about the medevacs for the Marines with Stim, but the pervert pillar, he didn't even kill the Ovi. It's still there. The Zerglings trying to counter. It's just queens. He has a few Zerglings now coming out, but the queens have been building up energy. Serral is very efficient. He doesn't just slap down a bunch of creep tumors. He doesn't just inject a bunch because it makes him feel good, but instead, actively, it's not a mistake to have energy on the queens, especially at this stage, but instead is preparing for the future. It's hedging against this exact sort of build that ByuN is doing. And Marines with Stim are good, but against 7, 8, how many? 9 queens? He's got a full King Henry of queens here, and that should be enough to drive back the initial drop. He's not going to be able to kill it, not if ByuN is awake. But enough of this to continue building drones, getting upgrades. He's already got an infestation pit on the way, which unlocks potentially infestors, and of course, and the Overlord, the combat veteran Overlord, is going to get promoted into Overseer. And middle management is all that most of us can aspire to, but the Marines stimming in, the Queens, one being targeted, transfuse. And the amount of damage they're taking, only a single Queen died. And her sacrifice not in vain. As, remember, it's much better to have the Queens go down than even your Zerglings and Banelings, let alone drones or hatcheries, because Queens do not cost larvae, they create it. So being able to use them as a buffer in the early game is a lot better than trading out Zerglings or other things which are an expenditure of resources, minerals, or otherwise. Yes, Queens cost minerals, but the more Queens you have, the better they get, to an extent. I'm not talking about domestic issues, but instead the actual strength of having that much energy to bring to bear. And, of course, always the greatest struggle of Zerg, which is anti-air. That is... He's got a hive at just before 8 minutes, which is definitely on the quicker side of things. He's skipped over the rest of the tech tree. Hopscotch over here for Serral, as he grows faster than a bamboo shoot and about as wide. It's just Lings, Banes, and upgrades, and a hive. And obviously the drones. And Overlord speed. You got the idea. The essence is what we're talking about here, and that's especially applicable to Zerg. ByuN, still a tank on the high ground. That's a lot of Marines. There's 2 Vipers on the way. Just as the tanks are getting into position, the creep spread, like I mentioned, incredibly efficient. So having 2 creep tumors near one another allows your creep to spread almost twice as fast. But that's the end of the exponential curve. 3 creep tumors does not do much more, if at all. But it's one of the quirks of Zerg. So Serral, with 1 or 2 tendrils of creep, and maybe a bit more in the more key locations like his 4th base, but he's got the Queens and Lings and Banes on the left side. He's got another group of units on the right. Now, these fights can change intensely fast. ByuN actually has checkpoints here. Multiple tanks jammed into obscenely strong corners. Meanwhile, the Queens, another one bites the dust. And another one goes. But just 2 so far, and again, we'll drive back the drop that was inevitably queued up for the left side. As Serral in the right place before the right time. The Chew Toy Depot serving its purpose here. Both spotting and potentially drawing A-moved Zerglings and Banelings into a less dangerous location. The Vipers are scanned. ByuN starts a Ghost Academy. Not the right order for Terran fans out there. A concerning time, to say the least. I don't think he even suspected the hive of being done. But unfortunately for ByuN, the hive was fully operational by the time any sort of coherent push arrived. And now, an Ultraless Cavern is in production. Adrenal glands nearly completed. The Vipers have plenty of energy. And +3 Carapace has already started. Mass upgrade rush. And of course, when you cut out the rest of the tech tree, you don't waste all that silly Vespene gas. It gets a lot easier to get your upgrades. It's just usually you struggle to deal with these Terran pushes. But somehow Serral has kind of stopped them almost before it starts. ByuN has delayed a couple of the hatcheries, and Serral's only at 76 drones right now. He has lost none of them. A blinding cloud on the tank, and even has some space to help against the Marines. The tank will be taken out. The 6 o'clock base, I'll call it about 5 o'clock, denied. And the Vipers, full energy. So Parasitic Bomb, I'm sure, is on the agenda. How many Queens? 8 Queens scattered throughout. 136 Zerglings. 57 Banelings. He has nearly 100 supply of Ling Bane, which isn't too surprising considering his totality of tech here. The awkward part is Queens count as army supply for the counter, though they don't show up on the select all army hotkey. They're in this kind of limbo state where they're both the most important army and economic units, and they never get any of the credit. You're right, Winter. Brenda, not game 1. But the Queens take out 1. Okay. Get off my creep! Sorry. The Queens knock out both medevacs. And Serral at 200 supply with 200 lings. And ByuN able to marginally delay. That even makes sense. The 5 o'clock base. But Serral, the momentum is gathering. The freight train of Serral is gathering momentum. And once it starts rolling, can ByuN stop it? ByuN, one of the most accomplished turtle Terrans, is battening down the hatches. He's got more command centers across the board. Building planetary fortresses, working on 3-3 ghosts in production. So Serral has claimed at least his half of the map, and I'm sure that will continue. But now he's on the attack. Gonna go through these tiny choke points, and EMP misses the mark, but that a rare miscue. Serral on creep doing great. 75 Zerglings for nothing. That's a cinematic level of losses there. Parasitic bombs quarantines the medevac. They do not stack. It's 125 damage. Medevacs have 150 HP at full. So you need 2 of them, though you can refresh it over time. We've got the late game. We've just kind of sped our way there. 7 missile turrets. The turrets per minute. The TPM begins to raise. An important stat for both top-tier Terrans and Bronze League heroes, who are sometimes indistinguishable. But Serral is not willing to let ByuN sit back and build up. He's got a Nidus network on the way. He's getting ranged attack upgrades, burrow. Notably no infestors, but until the ghosts start showing up en masse, then infestors are less necessary. But of course, the Serral Fester is always a threat. A drop is on the way. SCV's trapped in a prison of their own design. The Dropper Lord's just outside. I think well, he's going by, but there's enough Dropper Lords here. Wow, outflanked by missile turrets. ByuN trying to cut off. Okay, so now this is quite a quandary. There are 5 Overlords full of Zerglings. I think he might be able to just... He's just going to drop on the movie. All right, well, it's raining lings. Hallelujah. Parasitic bomb, kind of spitefully. We'll take out the medevac. Yet another planetary fortress. Right now, ByuN has more CCs than a poorly formatted corporate email chain. He's got 6 orbital commands, 4 planetary fortresses, 3 more command centers in production. The supply chain is getting intense. Meanwhile, Serral, 70 banelings. Just a couple Vipers, the crowbar to let the Lings and Banes in. And so far, he's lost almost twice as many resources, but neither of them has committed to very much at all. The Spire, the second Spire, is completing. Corruptors could be used as Vikings are now added to the field. Just a couple Vikings. What is this industrial? ByuN with a Brood War style. A bit more of a Biocurious composition, if you would. 4 more factories on the way. So the weapons of mass production are very much online. He's got plenty of scans. The Queen's caught in front, can help out against the Vikings and transfuse, very useful. The Banelings will connect on the Ghosts. Greater Spire is on the way, but here we are. Serral with 9 bases. It's almost impossible to easily tell exactly where... ByuN has like 20-something command. It's ridiculous. I don't... So now we have this extreme late game phase where Serral is going to try to be at least in the range of cost effective, whereas ByuN is effectively a campaign map. There's wherever you go, there's more bases, there's random sets of units, there's turrets. Like, there are 14 missile turrets and counting. Somehow there's still more command centers. A fusion core. There's tactical Niduses on either side. Niduses for maneuvering around between the bases. Okay, at what point is it too many? How many orbital commands is too many orbital commands? Because apparently 9 is not that number. But the Lings and Banes, lining clouds, just allowing the Liberators to take out 1 or 2 Lings and Banes is... That barely cuts into the number. 7 Corruptors on the way. So Serral dismantles the forward checkpoint here in order to free up supply for Corruptors and Ultralisks. 3 Ultras and 7 Corruptors. Serral with 5,500, 2,300 in the bank. The Ghost. Another Nidus. Serral's not gonna just let it go. And he's even got the Mass Overseer style. 13, the roguelike style of, well, it's like the poor biological version of the Orbital Command, where you get so many changelings that, well, one, you always have detection, and two, you always have vision. Now, you could also use Contaminate as the banelings. The acid neutralizing the base. You could always use Contaminate, but Contaminate only pauses production for just around 20 seconds. It costs 125 energy. And you have to get the Overseer close enough. So Contaminate pauses production on a building, any building, whether it's upgrades or siege tanks or SCVs, for 20 seconds. The reason we don't see that Mass Overseer Contaminate that I see sometimes theorized is simply that you'll lose most of your Overseers and they rarely have enough energy. It's just not worth it. There's no scenario where delaying production for 20 seconds on half of their production facilities is going to be a viable option. And if it is, you probably could have done a lot more than focus on that. The changelings, on the other hand, to keep track of the units. The scans constantly across the board. We can just assume there's going to be several scans at all times. But the Viper's trying to chase. Parasitic Bomb, a real threat. Throws one out. He's going to kill several of the medevacs. Blinding Cloud to open things up. Another planetary on the way, but the Ultras are just chewing through the front line. The Corruptor's knocking out the medevacs, finishing the work the Parasitic Bomb started. Another siege tank on the right side, taking some pot shots at the Zerglings. He turns the Thor into high impact mode to help out against the Corruptors. Multiple starports on the way. There are currently 10 orbital commands, 6 planetary fortresses, and 2 command centers who have yet to decide their fate, as well as 2 more in production. So we're looking at 20-something command centers in this picture. Meanwhile, Serral's lost 10,000 more resources, but he's lost less than 40 more gas. And what do you think is more important? Well, most of the time, it's the gas. Though occasionally we get to an issue. Oh, here come the Vipers. And Serral always manages, I say, the moment he loses the Vipers. But the Blinding Clouds, allowing the Ultras to chew through the planetary, the Lings and Banes. Losing the Vipers he's only lost 3, despite using them in a dozen engagements so far. They're made out of, effectively, paper mache and dreams. More like tears. Ideally tears of Terran, but usually tears of Zerg. And now you know we've reached the extreme late game. Microbial Shroud is done, by the way. The ranged damage reduction, if he chooses to use it, which I doubt, but a Nidus at the very back. If it gets through, obviously it could be a real issue for ByuN. But there are no lurkers, which are the usual choice to completely undercut the late game Terran. Thor drop! This tank has 36 kills, as it was just plinking away at Zerglings. There's enough somewhat amusingly, Zerglings quite a good counter to Thors. The ankle biters are things they can't take out easily, but the Hellbats are here to cover said ankles. Meanwhile, the Ultra's chewing through the front lines. There's not enough siege tanks to actually shut this down. The Banelings don't close the distance on the Ghosts, and everything else is not exactly an ideal target for the Banelings. Meanwhile, speaking of not ideal targets for the Banelings, the Thor found a spot where the siege tank can cover it. It's up to 45 kills, by the way. ByuN continuing to find these disgusting locations, these angles where Serral just cannot engage. But the siege tank itself, honestly, the drones and drawing siege tank fire might be the way at this point. The ghost count is up to 14. Serral has been mining for the most part from 2 additional bases. A base has 4,500 gas and around 11,000 minerals. Some bases have a little bit more or less, depending on the mineral patches, but I don't think there's any like that here. So that's the number we're looking at. Serral's lost 13,000 more minerals. But if he mines both sides, obviously, it's not just he's going to have more. ByuN will also have less. Only one player gets to use said minerals. It's whoever gets them first. And I think we're hurtling towards that sort of extreme beam counter late game. Sick EMP, bro. I think he meant to siege the tanks, which is the same hotkey as EMP. But, make no mistake, this is not the easiest army to control. Having multiple siege sort of units, multiple transformers here. He's completely cut out the Marines. Only has a few Marauders, and I have no idea where. Caustic Spray going to be used to melt through the planetary fortress. The Corruptors finding real value, and then might be able to just knock down the orbital command. ByuN doesn't... He's going to use the Infestor to prevent the... Will there be a scan? Like, why would you scan there? But ByuN has pretty much cut out everything. He has the biological mechanical units, because he knows flesh is weak and malleable. Only ghosts are allowed to retain it. Though Hellbats are also somehow a biological unit, because they got bat in the name, I guess. But Hellions have lion in the name, and they're not biological units, Alright, I'm just asking questions. The orbital is burning. Carrick is burning. And so far, ByuN burninating across the front line, but the Hellbats aren't enough to stop the Ultras. The Thor, after all that effort, is chewed up and spit out. The Ghost will line up the shots, and this choke point is asphyxiating right now. He tries to come up the ramp, and the Ghost will put a couple Ultras back down. And ByuN might not have much in the bank, but the infrastructure spending... The 20 orbital command. Infestors finding their way into the only spots without detection. The Venn diagram of freedom with the Liberators. And Serral is slowly but surely being driven off the contested bases down the center line on either side. Those are the... ByuN's building 4 more command... Okay. I'm calling it. This is it. This is the point at which it's too much. I asked myself that question. I'd like to answer it. Now is when. He's gone too far. And the Ghosts getting caught out. The Banelings. So, unlike your mother, Ghosts are light units now. So, Banelings actually do more damage. Though, with the last patch, then try a scan, they have 25 more HP. So, Banelings destroy Ghosts slightly quicker. Everything else, slightly less quickly. So, Baneling's quite a direct counter to the Ghost, and that makes the Fungal and Baneling combo the most important, arguably, in the late game. And that's what Serral's going to be relying on, as always. It comes down to whether Serral is able to unburrow the unexpected Infestor and throw out at least one huge Fungal. And hello? What? You said huge fun, gal? Not now, Brenda. When? Sorry, This is worse than a campaign mission. And in the heart of the Swarm campaign, they didn't have Liberators, which make this so much more difficult. So the thing about Liberators is they are not an air threat when they're in siege mode. What does that mean? That means that the Corruptors will not manually target them unless they're the closest target, because they consider them the same priority as medevacs. But we'll see. Here we go, the Corruptors off to the left side. They will split off. Fungal on the top right. The Ultras underneath. The Corruptors are working their way through the Liberators, but the Ghosts, the Liberators themselves, I mean, oof. That's my statement and testimony. But ByuN, through this, as well, just landing on the 9 o'clock base. Oh my. 10 Broodlords. Despite 3-4 scans simultaneously, the 10 Broodlords. So Broodlords are the best. I'm not saying they're great, but they're the best way to break a siege line. Because now the Broodlings are working against you. The Broodlings nibbling at the legs of your Ghosts, your other siege tanks. The siege tanks will dutifully and valiantly fire on the closest target, which is those Broodlings. And a lot of the time, the Broodlords are used to make the tanks do more damage to themselves than the Broodlings are able to do at any time. But it is the best option. Infestor Broodlord for 16 years of StarCraft, to over half of Serral's lifetime. And the broods are revealed. The thing is, oh, I was about to say not an ideal time, but whenever you can get multiple fungals, splitting off the infestors, he's got the Lings and Banes waiting for their moment. Which, if ByuN steps a little bit too far, all it takes is one. He's blasting his own planetary fortress as he's struggling to escape. ByuN is climbing back towards income parity here with the mule stimulus check he just dropped over to the left side. Neural Parasite is on the way, and I guarantee you Serral thought that he already had it. One of the best things you can do in this scenario is borrow some Terran units, because we all know they're quite strong. There's still 9 Overseers, so he's not going to be running out of cloak anytime soon. But the Overseers out of oversight mode might not have the detection unless they're directly on the front line. But ByuN has no I'm surprised we're not seeing a constant scan here. Did he really drop? He has 11 orbital commands. There's the scan. There's absolutely no excuse not to be utilizing it. The Thor! It was still stuck! He landed another command center in the same spot. ByuN! It's the same problem you just had, except it's worse because you killed your... Anyways. The siege tank. Those infestors cannot take much of a hit. Another Broodlord taken out. The duel continues. Microbial Shroud for the infestors. Which, looks like a couple ghosts came the wrong direction here. Over the last... So, Serral has killed 9 ghosts. Wait, what? I need to... How many ghosts was that? Why are there so many ghosts here? ByuN! Oh, what a ByuNder. Blunder. Blunder. Jimmy, edit that out. Edit out the repeat. I just did a ByuN. I know. For all the fire and fury, though, Serral has... I don't believe... He's really not won much of a fight. But can he win the war? He's lost 12,000 more resources, but 1,500 less gas. That is the key to all this. The whole time. Who could have thought that control of such a key resource would be a defining characteristic of this war? In this economy? Wild. The art of Zerg. Meanwhile, Serral, Broodlords. Is there a blinding cloud in there somehow? Indeed. Trying to control the Thors, but the Thors just pounding their way through. Designed to take out Broodlords in smaller numbers. ByuN destroying 3 ghosts and 1 tank. Serral destroying 4 ghosts. Like I said, the Broodlords turning the Terrans against one another. Most importantly, the siege tanks against anyone who's close to the Broodlings. But the Thors are still blasting their way through. The Queen's wandering up. Serral's starting to lose control of these key spellcasters. More Queens will be obliterated, but the Microbial Shroud helping them survive the Liberators for quite a dramatic time. But we're getting down to it. Something's got to give. Serral is clearly looking to defend this location. The Broodlord's in position. Here we go. Microbial Shroud to cover the attack. Meanwhile, Ultra's underneath. The Broodlords using the Thors against themselves. The Thor's not even targeting the Ultras. The Corruptor's knocking everything out of the sky. And the Broodlords will reign supreme. Somehow, ByuN is cleared from the field despite pushing forward. He waited for the moment he let his own hatchery die in order to free up the space to do a direct attack. And now Serral is gliding forward. And ByuN is flat broke. Here we go. He's trying to close it out now. He has his suspicions. Another fungal thrown out. He holds the Thor down. The Broodlords and the tanks combine to knock it out. And Serral, he wins the fight. Oh my. And this is why people hate / love Serral. Serral with less army size the entire game until one fateful moment. Serral's now sending... Now this is just to demoralize him. He's at 40... Well, I guess he has no mineral patches to mine from. He could destroy these by himself. He could kill these with his own unit. But there's something about sending your workers, especially sending drones, because no one does that. But Serral does not have the money to be building a bunch of spore crawlers or something. He's at 2K 1300. He's towed the economic line. The spore crawlers are providing vision. The infestor gets a fungal, interrupts some of the snipes. There's not enough anti-air. There's 6 ghosts. ByuN has it. No gas. We gotta go back to Marines. The battle was fought with ghosts and Thors against infestors and broodlords. But he's back to Marines. Serral has outlasted ByuN. The Sandpaper Zerg has ground him down. The Liberator wanders forward the siege tanks. That's a desperation move. The fungal holds him down. The Broodlords raid onto the siege tanks. And there's no way he thinks this is gonna work. This is just, all right, send it. So that way he can send 2 Gs. Serral with the most meticulous, the most precise surgical Zerg, doing surgery with like pool noodles and a sledgehammer, but surgery nonetheless, slicing out parts of ByuN's composition, gathering he never tried to retake that 9 o'clock base, yet somehow he came ahead. The mental math that he was doing in order to end up in this scenario is obscene. Like, there's no one like him. Game 2 is on Winter Madness, which I like to think everyone here enjoys every day. Like and subscribe. But I'd say, how, after that game, do you even load up and play another one? After a game like that, most of the people watching this would probably say, all right, that's enough for this year. Or 5. Or since Wings of Liberty, and I totally want to get back into it, but I have other responsibilities. But you know what? We're not here to talk about you or me. We're here to talk about ByuN slapping down a command center first, just ceding any sort of pressure in the early game to maybe gain some sort of advantage later on. Put together a big timing attack. And he's gambling that Serral's not going to punish him directly. But Serral's not the kind of guy who's going to just take a swing at you on a whim. But instead, more like while shaking your hand and maybe giving you a nice amiable smile, will file paperwork to take over your company and dismantle it, while also evicting you from your home and potentially stealing your wife, if she's into that. I wouldn't really blame her. But anyways, Jimmy, edit that out. The second command center, barracks on the high ground. The Overlord will see it, but by the time it's already completed, that's already too late to do anything directly about it. The question is, do you want to set yourself up for a big roach timing, like a rush to lair, or just acknowledge, like, there's already Zerglings in production, but those are to stop the Reaper. The Reaper that's not coming. The Overlord just gets one of its weird eyes on it, which are normal to Overlords, I'm legally obligated to say, but to me, anyways, check out my OnlyFans. But the Marine, I don't think he even saw it. Marines do not have weird eyes, cannot see nearly as far. Yeah, normal. Command center will finish. So like I mentioned, ByuN seeding the early Reaper, the early Hellions, really early anything. Which, now that Serral knows, he can build as many drones as he wants, pretty much. At least for the first 4 or 5 minutes of the game. Sure, there's going to be... He's even getting a starport. He didn't get a reactor behind the factory. Despite the 2 gases. Interesting. Which means he's going to have just a few Marines, a couple Hellions, and maybe a Viking? A bare bones sort of opener here. Still, a Destiny Cloudfist build. A barracks, a factory, a starport. To start things off, but really no meat to these potatoes. Whatever that means. Scouting Hellion. This is a strategy utilized in Terran versus Protoss, where they don't have units that could actually chase down, surround, and slaughter your Hellion. But ByuN willing to risk it. This is actually his first scout of the game, 3.5 minutes in. Everything up to this point has just been a calculated risk. He did not know whether Serral was going to have a bunch of Zerglings. He did not know if roaches came knocking at his door, and they very well could have. It's unlikely, but they could have. He'd just lose the game. But here we are. The game will continue. As Serral, of course, not going to gamble on that sort of silliness. A medevac on the way for a few Marines. It's going to go for the Overlord, which, I mean, just calm down. Gives this away. A little bit of a supply block is a Zergling gets up the ramp. And he spots the third command center. How does a Zergling get in after all this? There's a single gap in the wall. There's a couple Marines, but he still got in to see the third command center. And that is incredibly important in this sort of scenario, because command center first doesn't necessarily guarantee a third CC. But somehow Serral's Zerglings always get... They're too cute. All right. Lair is on the way. Serral's still kind of hedging his bets, as he's not sure exactly what he's dealing with behind it. Covering his bases. He's got 53 drones and counting, though. Roach Warren is completed. No roaches yet, but that's kind of an admission that... Well, roaches can be a stronger choice than lings, especially early, because they don't cost nearly as much larva. In order to get the lings to deal with early pushes, you pretty much have to completely cut drone production. Now, the struggle with roaches is they don't scale nearly as well. And there's a Liberator on the way. Serral didn't have a Spore Crawler, but ByuN didn't send in the Liberator immediately, which means the Spore Crawler should be done by the time the Liberator shows up. There's the double Evo chamber. A curious positioning. I don't know if that's to shut down Hellions, but he actually... I think it might be a choke point. He could put another Evo there. For most players, I wouldn't read into it that much, but if there was ever a time and a player... Did he lose a single drone? Come on. The drone's able to split away just in time, and the Liberator doesn't quite have the vision range at the edge. And that's an infestation pit. One Zergling and one Overlord lost. 6 minutes in. ByuN has only put on the lightest and of mostly emotional pressure. The Zerglings, the moment the command center sits down, the Zerglings are there to poke at it. Gets one of the SCVs, forces the Hellions back. And, well, Serral. Go into the Serral cam for a moment. Just keeping tabs on it all. There's the injects. Slapping a few more in. The Roach is coming together. Zergling still on the run. He's got +1 ranged attack, Roach speed, and Carapace on the way. So clearly more focused on the Roach composition, which is an interesting choice. The Roaches are a battering ram. They're not something you usually use into the later game, because the closer the Terran gets to 200 supply, the harder it is to make them useful. Because 2 supply of Roaches is simply just does not stack up. But here we are. ByuN stims forward. He doesn't have 1-1 done yet. He doesn't have combat shield, which means, well, it's an okay trade. And, oh, the Liberator! He has the Liberator in the disgusting spot. So, I don't know if Ravagers can hit it, but there is a spot on this map in particular where the Liberator literally cannot be hit by any ground units. You need air units, but maybe Ravagers? I'm not sure. And Serral seems to be a little more confident. That is another benefit of the Roaches, is the access to Ravagers, as we see the ultimate duel. The Liberator bullying the Overlord wishing it would stop. The Terrans never understanding that word. But the Overlord lives. And you know what they say, that which doesn't kill you gets you sent back into the fray. Get right in there, Billy. My name is Cletus. You pick that up from the Terrans? I know you can talk. I don't... The whole class is there with you. The Overlords staring down the Liberator. No one able to attack. Well, technically the Liberator could attack the Ovals, but why draw attention? Meanwhile, there's 48 Marines, 9 medevacs. He seems to have quite an abundance of medevacs, and while I might support a medevacs for all policy, this doesn't seem like the most efficient utilization. So, 20 Marines for 1 medevac, and then another 20 Marines for... And the medevacs don't matter. The Fungal catches all but a few Marines, traumatized. Quite a lesson to be learned there. We'll see if ByuN is capable. And, oh no. Not enough Marines to fit in the medevac on the left. Not enough Marines to fill even one on the right. And a 2-pronged disaster. The tuning fork of Zerg stabbing ByuN through the eyes. He's going to retreat back to his base and heal up the few survivors of his wounds. Meanwhile, Serral has everything. He's already finished an Ultralisk Cavern. He's got a Spire and a Hive, obviously not in that order. The Hive was kind of important. I digress. Adrenal Glands, +1 melee attack, +2 Carapace, Chitinous Plating. But ByuN has 175 supply. He's going to have 2-2 more quickly. And this sort of army, especially before the Ultras have Kindness Plating, has real potential. The Infestors are an existential threat, of course, to the bio, as we've already seen. But right now, Serral trying to split the Zerglings, but caught between a rock and a hard place. The Widowmine slammed the point home, killing a couple dozen Zerglings. And nope, well, he threw out a fungal, but I don't think it caught much. The Marauders tanking the damage from the Banelings, unable to close the distance. Another fungal catches a chunk. A few more coming in. There's still energy. Ravagers, oh, that's a big one. But the Banelings, a single Baneling. But the Medivacs had not healed the Marines, despite how many of them there were. And again, he's left with like 10 Medivacs with just 4 Marines. Meanwhile, that Liberator has 0 kills, despite putting in so much effort. It finally success. But can Ravagers hit it? ByuN selects it. I don't know if he was sure, but ByuN on the open field, the Ultras, daddy's home. And the Ultras are chasing down. They don't have speed, so they can't close the distance that reliably unless the Fungals come through, but the Infestors are even slower, so they're making their way across. ByuN is pushed all the way back to his third base. He's taken a fourth. The Planetary finishing just on time to potentially save the day. Draws some of the Ultralists up to the high ground. Widow Mines will splash through. A couple Ultras split off, but the Planetary will be enough to drive Serral back for now. And ByuN survives. This was the most dangerous... Well, a fungal, but he should be able to target down some of the Ultras. Not too much of an effort for a couple dozen Marauders. And on the open field, he doesn't have +3... Carapace. And he's only working on +2 melee. On the open field, the Marines and Marauders just pirouette away. Their drugs and their guns and their fancy ranged attacks. Serral with 5 Overseers. He's maxed out. But he doesn't have much in the bank. He knows he's got to be a little careful. He's opening up those offending rocks. Making sure there's more space to work with. The closer we get to a flat plain and an open field, the better it is for Zerg. In almost every case. Maybe Lurkers notwithstanding. But ByuN takes down a base on the left side. Throws out a fungal, catches an unlucky medevac. But again, on the right, 3 Ultras. The Marauders try to kite around the Venn... Not a Venn diagram of freedom. That's just a circle. The circle of freedom is not enough to stop the Ultras, though a couple of them incredibly badly bruised. How many queens? 6 queens. Some of the medevacs coming back home to get repaired. An army of the survivors, which is almost exclusively Marauders, will obliterate a base. A Liberator sieging up the natural. But ByuN starting to regather momentum because Serral has not managed to get any sort of counterattack. He has not... This army, especially with all the Roaches and Ravagers mixed in, which are slowly being phased out, does not scale that well. He can bully the army around the open field, but he doesn't do so well with multi-pronged attacks. There's no real anti-air. The Changelings are blocked. Serral just sheets down a bunch, I guess an appropriate word, a bunch of Changelings in front of the Ultras and slows them down even further. And off of creep, they're going to struggle. They need those Fungals. An Infestor, how does he do this? He just slides right through and does it beyond. That was some obvious worm sign there. And the Infestor, it just dies. Never mind. And without the fungal, the Ultras are already badly bruised. Only 1 survives. The Ravagers are obliterated. ByuN is just tearing through everything. He's chased it down. Another Infestor just wandering up, and Serral notices at the last second. Now expanding to the bottom left corner, but ByuN has fully regathered momentum. In the last 30 seconds, he's destroyed 3,300 minerals and 1,500 gas from Serral, and only lost 1,200 minerals and 400 gas. Right now, he's at 200 supply, and Serral's just trying to chase him down. He'll successfully do so. The Lings get the wraparound. The Medevac's taking their sweet time. Eventually pick him up, but maybe because he was microing to the north side. The drop, or maybe just ran out. It doesn't matter either way because the base was taken down. And another Ultra. Kill 1 base, get an Ultra for free. The Fungals, I'm sorry, the Infestors, but you know what I mean. Meanwhile, the drops right into the jaws. A single Marine being eviscerated. He's kiting over to the hatchery in the top right. Serral, the Banelings closing in! And the Ravagers, he didn't retarget the hatchery! An SCV could kill it. Meanwhile, drops behind the mineral line. And the Ultras just unable to squeeze themselves into a spot. I feel like Serral should just kill this base and rebuild it, because that's just a liability now. But he doesn't have the money. He's supply blocked. Serral lost so many overseers. He lost so many hatcheries that, okay, wait a second. ByuN is now even on income. And this is not... ByuN has... Despite how much Serral was able to do to defend, he didn't get any counter damage. He's killed 7 total SCVs the entire game. 120 Marines. But the Liberators, he gets a Queen. He's getting multiple drones. The army on the right side. ByuN is looking be unstoppable right now. Serral still has near 200 supply, but ByuN has more in the bank. The Liberator over the top. The Banelings rolling through. He picks up into the medevacs in the severe lack of anti-air, but Serral borrows some of ByuN's anti-air. Widowmine's a double-edged grenade. Wait, a regular grenade. But the Widowmines take out 2 of ByuN's medevacs. And over the last 2 minutes, Serral getting a little bit closer. ByuN destroys 100 Zerglings, 4 Ultras. He gets a little bit of everything. Meanwhile, Serral has taken more than his pound of flesh. He's killed 6 Liberators, almost exclusively with Ravagers. But the brawl continues across the entire field. An absolute slobber knocker this game. Back and forth, and there's a bunch of changelings in the main. He can't see the little... Oh, no. Oh, come on. The Nidus Worm. I don't know if he can't see it, or he just doesn't know. There's a changeling. I don't know if the changelings actually block that. They almost block the mini-map Nidus, which is crazy. I don't know if that was the intent, but the Liberators... Now a Venn diagram of freedom to hold the line. And ByuN kind of caught. Does he come back? Because this is a slowly escalating problem. He is sending Zerglings into the Liberators. There are no lurkers. He burrows a couple. Unclear if ByuN noticed, but he's going absolutely every which way. Serral continues re-expanding. He's somehow regrown quite a bank. He has no further tech. Loses a hatch. But here we go. It's all over the place. And the Widowmine's out in front. There's still the potential Nidus in the main. ByuN pushing forward. Another Nidus? Where was that one? Unclear. But ByuN. I thought things were going to ramp up, but instead ByuN tucks back into his shell. A changeling will spot an uncomfortably close neighbor here at the 8 o'clock base. The Queen's struggling. Only 2 Queens remain! Brenda! What, Susan? Where did everyone else go? Oh, that wasn't rhetorical? Oh, they're dead. What? Meanwhile, another Nidus. As they scatter into the main, ByuN not leaving any units behind to deal with this. He even brings back like 30, 40 supply. Again, there's not really much that could come through the Nidus that would be much of a threat, but oh, here we go. The main attack. And Serral committed some into the Nidus form. He has barely any anti-air. And now, the overlapping Venn diagram of freedom. 6 Liberators completely scattered. He's splitting, but he just has to work his way through it. Meanwhile, ByuN over to the right side. The Liberators will move forward. The drops will continue until morale improves, and Zerg morale has never been at a particularly high level. Another Nidus in the bottom left corner. 1 hatchery down. A second hatchery down. ByuN is turning the tables on the world champion. And unless Serral can flip them yet again, he's running out of momentum. Though not running out of money. He still has 5,000, 3,000 in the bank. Continuing forward, the Liberator's covering. Meanwhile, the Fungal! He catches a chunk of the Marauders. Picks up a couple. But ByuN, some of his momentum shifting. The double on the Liberators. He gets one, the other one barely able to evade. Pulls back yet again. And the lack of anti-air continues to be the issue. As ByuN is streaming across the map. He's going to drop the base. 9 Overlords on the way. As Serral keeps getting supply blocked, he's losing so many Overseers scattered throughout the field. There's 8 Widowmines in random locations. There's a whole bunch of stuff burrowed in ByuN's main. The drop, 9 Corruptors on the way. The spawning pool preemptively being rebuilt. Is that intentional? I assume so, because it's the most exposed on the corner. And doesn't seem so important until you really need it. The Liberators covering the attack to the front, and the Corruptors could not come too early at this point. Unlike some but the Liberators knocked down by the Ravagers. The drop at the third base. Corruptors to finally clean up the medevacs. There's still an Infestor underneath. Another Liberator knocked down. The Vikings are just chewing through the Overseers, a legion of changelings. But somehow Serral is still mining from like 2-3 extra bases. You put one hatchery down and 2 pop back up. He barely has any gas income. He's realizing that now. He's not mining gas from the center. He's lost on the other side. And ByuN just realized Serral's mining in the bottom left corner. Serral has been mining quite comfortably. He even has an escape Nidus if ByuN doesn't take it out immediately, which should be the first priority. Serral is going to lose all these drones. The Nidus will be taken out. A Liberator. Ravagers clean it up. Main base. Nidus in the corner. Liberators coming back to defend. Again, the Zerglings are... You have to deal with it. All right, a small leak, it can do a lot of water damage. Please like and subscribe so I can pay my renovation bills. But the trickle of Zerglings is staunched, and the source will be cut off as the Nidus Worm is disconnected from the network. Not everything needs to be in the cloud. Shut up, co-pilot. More Liberators on the way. ByuN with advanced ballistics and Caduceus reactor for that medevac energy regen and Liberator range. But Serral keeps re-expanding. He seems to, every time he seems to lose a fight, he has more money by the next one. He has 6 Ultralisks with his army. These SCVs are cut off. The ByuN desperately needs to leave, like, 6 supply of bio. 3 Marauders in the main base would stop this from continually happening. But he just... Serral is... What? 0 APM? ByuN! Feels like ByuN... What is he doing? He's looking for infestors, I think. Oh no! He unhotkeyed all his bases. Oh, we've all been there. We caught the exact moment when he accidentally overrode his command center hotkey and he was resetting all his orbitals on it. Oh no. One of the most common and devastating mistakes that can set you back several seconds. And therefore, against players like Serral. Oh, specific, oh my. Again, liberation is at hand, but this time, Serral, well, there's enough Marines underneath. And the Infestor, are you kidding me? He gets him right through the choke point. The Corruptor's unchallenged. The Ravager's participating as well. And the Liberator count is down to 2. And ByuN is broke. And nearly broke in. Another... The Ultras through the Nidus, but guess what? Well, actually, that's enough bio that... Does Serral even know? Oh, he's just chewing... Okay, wait a second. The Ultras... I don't think Serral remembers this Infestor. It's so well hidden, even from him. And also that's so much bio that the Ultras couldn't actually challenge it. And again, Serral has a hatchery here. He rebuilt another... They just keep popping up. Finally, he realizes the Infestor's there. Oh, that was the worst case scenario. Unburrows it right in the face. A Spore Crawler takes out a Liberator. ByuN still scratch it at 200 supply, while Serral has 200 with 7,300, 3,000 in the bank. Gotta give him the oh no. The army is surrounded, ripped to shreds, I say. And again, Serral just dismantling ByuN. The Niduses kept him busy. And it seemed like ByuN had all the momentum, but Serral just refused. Somehow he just kept building up more and more of a bank. And, well, it's because of the lack of ghosts. Without ghosts, even if it seems like he's winning a fight, he's trading out units every time. The ghosts aren't able to get the almost untouchable snipes. And Serral eventually, this time, was a rockier road. The Sandpaper Zerg had to do a lot of work to grind this one down. But after 23 minutes, 500 Zerglings, and 200 Marines, 100 Marauders, 30 Liberators. No ghosts. was unable or unwilling to get there. And I understand not wanting to let Serral regain any sort of momentum, because switching into Ghost is kind of like switching into Broodlord. Kind of an appropriate analogy, but they're costly. And they have to be in the right place at the right time. And that costs you a whole lot of mobility. Something that Marines and Marauders and Medivacs usually have whatever they want. So it's understandable not to go for the Ghost. And in fact, it seemed like it was going to work. But then Serral. Well, ByuN looking even closer in game 2. But not close enough. The Burrowed Infestors. They didn't all land the Fungals, but just barely enough of them did. And that brings us to game number 3. Serral looking for the clean sweep. ByuN not looking to be swept away so easily. We'll see if he gets a choice in the matter. It's hard to pinpoint where it went wrong. Just a few too many. I honestly think it was the Niduses. The Niduses continually dragging the attention back. One of the most valuable resources in the entire game. Attention per minute. And no one is better at maximizing that than Serral. The efficiency required to do everything Zerg needs to do and anything else on the other side of the map to hit your injects, get your creep spread, make sure you've got overseers with everything. You're not wasting your banelings in the fights. And also, counterattack is a bridge too far for most, but Serral's quite the architect. The trickle of Zerg, like, he forced him to pay attention. Sending like 50 Zerglings one at a time into the main base it must be dealt with. And ByuN continually sent back a disproportionate amount of the army to deal with it. Because at some point it might be ultras squeezing through there. Uncomfortably yet demanding attention. So if Serral just happened to send, it'd be a huge commitment and a massive risk. But if Serral sent like 3 ultras instead of 50 Zerglings, then there's a chance ByuN just loses all his production, which is obviously not great. But here we are. You know the start. Command center first. Double gas behind, so a 1-1-1 more than likely. Barracks factory starport. And we'll see if ByuN has another take on it. I don't know if I've seen ByuN even try mech. Maru and even Clem have both, and Hero Marine, notably, at Home Story Cup not too long ago. Though time seems to speed by. Like and subscribe for Existential Dread. But mech is... it can work against Serral. In fact, it might be the best option because it requires such a different response than the Marines and Marauders. But interestingly, Serral not even bothering with Hydras throughout either game so far. Hydras are kind of a detour on the tech tree. If you're going Hydras, you're going Hydras. You don't go Hydras and then... you don't easily switch out of the Hydras because they're so gas intensive, especially if you end up going Lurkers as well, which you probably will. It hasn't seemed necessary. The Hydra's helpful. Well, they would have been helpful for dealing with the Medivacs, but Serral was kind of locked in. Somewhat counterintuitively, usually against Terran, you either go Roaches or Hydras. But going both is... they're both countered by similar things. Mass siege tank, and strong choke points. Even more so than Ling Vane. And they both cost gas, especially if you want to add any Ravagers, so... and just as I say it, I swear I wasn't trying to be cheeky foreshadowing. But ByuN is taking us to McDonald's. 2 more factories on the way. I don't know if this is by design or desperation. Maybe a little of both. But going to try the mech Terran against Serral. And there's plenty of unit compositions. The Hell Clones, the Battle Mech. That can be incredibly effective and almost... brokenly so, in the way it feels like you can't even counter them if you're not prepared. And not in the sense like, oh, you're behind, but you just literally cannot touch them because cyclones lock on to everything that can get close, and Zerglings get incinerated. So we'll see what flavor ByuN chooses to partake in as the Hellions poke out. Mag Field Accelerator on the way. 50% more lock-on damage. I imagine Blue Flame will be the choice for helping against those Zerglings on the other. Indeed, he's getting the upgrades before building any units out of the factory. Tell you the priority. The Overlord he actually hasn't seen the gases at the natural. Just content to creep everyone out at the pervert panel. Is considered succeeding in its line of work. Serral, there's on the way. No Roachborn. I'm interested to see, because this is one of the builds that, if you don't get a jump on it, feels so difficult to deal with, even more than the normal Marines and Medevacs. Part of that is the investment. Clearly, ByuN hiding. He's got the Cyclones on the high ground alongside the additional Hellions. He may be forced to show them eventually. He's showing two Marines. He knows that Serral can see something nearby here. The Zerglings are coming into the third. There's just 3 Hellions, and they're about to have Blue Flame, which means they won't be able to hide their identities any longer. Also, the Overseer coming in will give it all away. The Cyclones. Now, there's no guessing anymore. Begun. The Clone Wars have. Serral with Lings and Banes. And Queens. Can't forget the Queens. Never forget. Those Cyclones fully upgraded. Roachborn is on the way. Serral clearly blindsided by that. A couple transfuses, but the Cyclones rip right through. 2 Queens dead immediately. A whole lot of drones vulnerable. Queens trying to tank some more of the hits. The Zerglings looking for a surround, but it's like trying to catch a fire with paper. If the Zerglings don't come in from a perfect angle, they're going to just spontaneously combust before they get anywhere close. But he's going to go with the Ling Bane. And Banelings aren't actually light units. They just don't have much HP. Somewhat counterintuitively. But that means that the Hellions don't do additional damage against them. So they're a little more reliable than the Lings themselves. Also, of course, Banelings do bonuses against the Hellions, being light unit. Kind of turning the table there. But the Hellclone sharking around as Serral. 72 drones. Wow, ByuN scans forward. The Banelings forcing a bit of a split. They will... Well, that's not right. Pretty much nothing. Another wave of Ling Bane. Serral down 15 supply. Which is not too surprising with Ling Bane. Oh, spots another wave of Banelings. Ooh, gets a couple Hellions. Gonna incinerate the Lings, and the surprise was worth a couple Hellions. And that's about it. Wow. Serral struggling already. He was struggling before he even realized it, but now it's coming to fruition. Locking onto the Queens. There's another group intercepting a potential flank. As obviously, Hellions and Cyclones are able to outrange all of this. That's their whole point here. But he maybe committed a bit too much over to the top side. Serral backs off, adding Roaches in. Once Roach speed is done, it's going to be a much stronger option. But the scans will keep the lock on for even further, able to pick off a couple of the Roaches. Serral needs to crush this as soon as possible before it continues gathering strength. Beyond with 69 SCVs, he's adding more factories back at home. Serral chasing off the creep. Another wave of lock-ons. The Hellions just kiting back. Serral finally turns around. Meanwhile, Zerglings in the third base, which we just caught the beginning of this. Looks like it wasn't quite a wall here. Gets a few of the SCVs, but ByuN turns around immediately. A few more of the Banelings. The lock on the scan to chase them home. But he has to be careful about going too far on the creep. If the Banelings are able to springboard enough, they can start getting the damage done. And obviously, Cyclones are not premium targets, but hitting anything would be nice at this stage. as ByuN continues. Another wave of Zerglings. Serral led with a single Ling and drew out the Widow Mine hit. And that was definitely intentional. Just a perfect split there. Gonna get a few more of the SCVs, and most importantly, buy himself time. A single infestor is on the way. Neural Parasite. There are 3 infestors on the field, which are even more dangerous, and he spots them. Serral has kept his 4th base, and despite the constant struggle back and forth to deal with all this, despite the fact he's lost nearly 3 times as many resources, a single fungal would be even more devastating than against the bio. As Marines do not cost gas and Marauders do not cost much, this entire army can be slaughtered in a single fungal. It is a obscenely costly one as well. The Baneling's rolling through, catches a group, gonna split its way back. The Roaches and Ravagers maintaining the momentum, and some of the drones incinerated at the 6 o'clock base. But Serral doesn't need it. He certainly wants it. ByuN has a 4th, a planetary fortress down the center. He's up to 7 factories. He hasn't even built a starport. This is pure mech. And now with the infestors on the field, and soon to be beneath it, siege tanks are the choice. Realizing the chance to maybe grind down Serral and pick away at his army has mostly passed. He needs something that could deal with those infestors more reliably. And siege tanks, well, a clear choice. Meanwhile, the infestors out in front, throws out a fungal, catches a group. The Zerglings as well, but the siege tanks, drawing him into the fight, whips out the corrosive bile, knocks out 1 tank. ByuN gonna continue to keep the pressure on. He does not want to let Serral set up counterattacks. He does not want to let Serral get Hive tech set either. The Hive is done. Vipers in production. 8 infestors. Neural Parasite is completed. But ByuN has a strong understanding of the risks. He's got missile turrets scattered throughout, and infestors getting close enough for Neural Parasite would be quite a threat. Widow Mine helps thin things out. The Roaches and Lings dragging back most of the Hell clones. The siege... Oh, look at that spread. I can't believe it's not butter. A Greater Spire is on the way. The Viper has completed. Hive tech coming online in Serral. Very efficient with his creep spread. Most of it has been pushed back at the front, but he has more along the right side where ByuN has been less focused. Another siege tank picked off, but the closer ByuN gets to 200 supply, the harder it gets for Serral to deal with it on the ground. Thus the Greater Spire for Broodlords, but he doesn't even have Corruptors in production. So until that's the case, Broodlords are not really an option. But being that much closer, of course, is important. The siege tanks are creeping their way forward, somewhat ironically. He's keeping the pressure on the right flank, but Serral has enough Roachlings split off, and even has some burrowed Lings out there helping out. Cyclones are incredibly good against Cyclones. So he borrows a couple. We'll drag them in. At the very least, he guarantees a kill with the Neural Parasite. ByuN doesn't even have a hint of ghosts. He has a single barracks floating halfway across the map. That's its entire purpose now. The Zerglings are too cute to land on. We all know that. Meanwhile, Blinding Cloud on the front line of tanks. The back line is more than enough to get Serral to turn around, scatter some corrosive bile, rebuilding the missile turrets. 6 Corruptors in production to refill the supply, but ByuN is maxed out with more money in the bank, and he's taking a 5th base. Serral adding a wall of spine crawlers, the backbone of the defense. More scattered missile turrets, almost entirely for detection, but they're going to have a dual purpose momentarily. Those Corruptors. Broodlords could very well turn the tides. There's still 16 Cyclones, so it's not like there's no anti-air, but against Broodlords, well, moving forward, the Infestor's right at the edge of the scan. Neural Parasite's one. Might as well just kill it. Well, this is quite something. There's no units here, the Hell clones, but Serral, he caught him! Oh no! Doesn't even need the fungal, it's almost a formality. ByuN looking the other way. Serral gets a catch on a massive chunk of the Hell clones, just in time. Did he notice the broods? Here comes Serral again. Neural Parasite is a real option. He's almost ready to... He almost took out the hatchery, but almost isn't good enough. The Zerglings will counterattack. Just a few Broodlords is all he needs. And then the fungals to unburrow and beneath the ground and bind them. 6 more infestors on the way. He's going to have double-digit infestors. As ByuN has gone from 200 to 140 supply. What a speed run downhill. But we're not skiing, but instead, trying not to get swept away. The avalanche of Zerg will continue. And just 5 or 6 Broodlords to pry open the defense, to crush the siege tanks and see them driven before you and hear the lamentations of the Terrans. Serral is on the march yet again. The Broodlord Supreme in the skies. The Thors, far too little and probably too late. And with this many infestors and only a couple siege tanks, the infestors, if the Thors get too close, well, look at me, I'm the captain now. Not all the Thors in high impact mode. That split second may cost him. He's trying to get the neural parasite. Serral right on the edge of siege. He can't see siege tank range. He's just eyeballing it with the infestors, though. You know, after several years, over a dozen of StarCraft 2, you probably get a pretty good idea. But he's actively putting them on hold position right at the edge of siege tank range. He grabs a Viking. Thors and Vikings. And our Finnish player should know what this Nordic composition is most accomplished at. Dealing with Broodlords, but wow, holds him down. It knocks him out. Bit of a gruesome death. But Serral again. He's flipped the table. ByuN had the bank. He had the advantage. But Serral crushed the more mobile parts of the army, and now he's pinned down the rest. There's no siege tanks, but he doesn't want to risk it. And why would you? Serral's regathered. He's now got 3 or 4 mining bases. ByuN is like 1.5. The main and the natural. The main's almost gone. The natural's nearly dry. The Broodlords. But the infestors. What's going to stop the Neurals? Oh, wow. He's knocking out Vikings with corrosive bile and fungal. Another wave. He's throwing up the alley-oop. The neural parasite into the corrosive bile. The double spell casting. But, well, if it works, it works. And it's working well enough. And again, ByuN has gone from destroying 3 times the amount of resources to losing 3,000 more. Serral with he both was vulnerable to the strongest part of the battle mech composition and now is exploiting its greatest weakness. Dealing with this late game Zerg with no ghosts. Just mass Thor. It's an unwieldy unit composition to say the least. There's not a single... He doesn't know for sure there's not a single siege tank. But in the end, does it even matter? Serral's Thor's blasting through! The orbital command is gone. The Zergling counterattack tying up the rest of the units. The Broodlord still raining down. The Thors turning on one another. And, well, awkwardly trying to deal with these Vikings, but ByuN driven back yet again. And the Broodlords may go down, but at what cost? The Cyclones are called in yet again. The Fungal catches one on the edge. Zerglings are more than capable counter, and ByuN throws everything onto the creep, and Serral says, all right, thank you for expediting the process. There's nothing left as he chases it down. Serral, 3 games in a row. And I would say each more decisive than the last. I guess game 2, the turnaround was decisive, but ByuN unable to hold as the Turtle Terran. ByuN unable to break through with the bio. And the mech, too malleable in game 3. Serral, 3 games in a row. The infestors, as always, a key part to unlock victory. And Zerg players throughout the world hoping that no one else noticed that Serral is continuing to make infestors the strongest unit in the game. But hopefully you enjoyed. Thank you to Pig, and thank you for watching. I hope I made your day a big chunk of it, at least a little bit better. If you got the means and motivation, it'd be awesome to check out Patreon or YouTube membership. But I hear liking and subscribing is still free, at least for now. And if you haven't yet checked out the second channel, Winter Gaming TV, find even more strategy games and streams of StarCraft 2 as well. But thank you to our Mule Tier patrons. ByuN could have used them. Big Jiggy, Devin Door, Kate Mario Suit, and everyone. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to check out this video Jimmy picked out just for you. Otherwise, I hope to see you next time. Thank you for watching. Good luck. Have fun. Stay chill.